You probably heard of Brian through the Transform conference,
Yeah.
because it's me, Brian, and the team. We were pre-conference support running these gyms specifically for Transform.
Oh,
Then we
cool.
were at the conference. We were running the green room and
Okay.
directing each of the breakouts. And then post-conference, we were doing debriefs with the speakers that requested it.
All right, so for all the fresh faces here today, we'll kick off a little intro, and then we'll get into our micro training. We're gonna let Antonio in, and then once we get through the micro training, which lasts probably about 10, 15 minutes, then we'll open it up to a gym. So with that being said, Anthony, I'll do our kickoff call here. So I want to welcome everybody to the presentation gym, everybody here on Zoom and LinkedIn Live. My name is Brian Sparks. I'm an executive communication coach with Heroic Voice Academy. My co-host, Anthony Lee, founder and executive communication coach at Heroic Voice Academy. The goal of this show and this program is to become a fully prepared conference presenter. These presenters are recognized for their authority, respected for their leadership, and rewarded for their impact. Anthony, we're wrapping up the different voices that go into a presentation. Now, for those of you hearing that for the first time, a voice is kind of the way in which you address your audience, not the copy, not the content, but really the context of the way that you speak to people. But we'll unpack that a little bit. This is the summary. So all of you who have been here before, you will get kind of the wrap-up summary. And those of you who've never been here before, you'll get an overview and see how these all play together. But you can kind of consider them like scales in an instrument in order to keep the tempo and rhythm within a particular presentation to, I guess, play the music your audience wants to hear. All right, Anthony, enough of my cheesy opening lines. Let's jump right into it and do this summary.
I love the way that you set this up, Brian, because all of these voices, they do show up in a major presentation. However, you've done a TED Talk, and in the best of TED Talks, the speaker actually goes into one of these voices for a particular reason. And hopefully by the end of the presentation gym today, you'll have a better idea of which voices ideally to use in which section of your presentation. So we're at workout number 9, and this is a storyboard, and we're going to break this down into 3 parts. What voices are present in the beginning, the open? What voices are present in the middle? This is where you get to share your core message. And what voices are present at the close? So let's just start off with the open. These are 4 voices that I always hear in great presentations. Brian, you always mentioned that in the first 30 seconds, you have to share one thing. What is that one thing?
Well, if you're a startup, it's the problem. And if you're giving an intro, then it's the voice of a contributor. So we'll start right there. You really want to set the context of there's a problem to be solved. So Anthony, you can walk through the framework, but those are the 3 things that are top of mind for me in terms of how you open up a particular presentation.
Yeah, and problem doesn't mean something that's urgent. It could be a problem that you have a solution to. It could be the problem of there's a knowledge gap and I need to learn something. But the best opening voice is always going to be a contributor voice. I'm here for you. I've researched who you are, what you care about, and I've curated all of the content so that you can derive maximum ROI. And that's great. The problem that we've mentioned multiple times in the past, Brian, is do not open with the voice of a leader. You haven't earned it yet. But by doing problem, you've created relatability to the audience and empathy. The second voice that I typically hear is a storyteller. There may be a case where this problem exists, and you're opening with that particular situation just to share, hey, this is something that's important. We need to do something about it. Then the next slide is the visionary. There's not just a problem today. There is a potential solution. And you, as a visionary, come to the stage because you see the future a little bit more clearly than the audience. And they're there to sit down and learn more about those details. And then the tail end of the open is we have a choice, right? Every audience member always has three choices. Number one, they can do nothing, right? And that's the safest choice. Status quo, I'm not going to do anything. Number two, they could already have a plan in place. They may have developed a solution in-house. They may be looking at one of your competitors. And the third choice is, I'm open to another path to this vision, to this promised land. And that's what you get to unpack. So Brian, nuances as to best practices and voices that we find in an opening.
So what I like about the voice of a contributor, and just to kind of recap, because I know what we're seeing on the screen is context to set us up for how we move forward from here on out. But the four voices that we're talking about is number one, the contributor, number two, the storyteller, number three, visionary, and number four, the advisor. Now, I love the voice of a contributor because it takes a lot of pressure off of the speaker to come out the box, looking to solve the problem. You're just trying to say, hey, I have an idea, or I have a particular set of insights that I want to share. I go back to elementary school. I'm a Gen Xer, and I remember back in the day, we used to take things to do show and tell, and you're just sharing about something that you have in your life. Will it be a book report or a toy or a story? It's just, you're looking to contribute to relationships and bring people together. The goal of all presentation is to get a second conversation and build trust, connection, and relationships. So a contributor says, I have an idea. For example, Harvey, like a TED Talk, you're opening up with this idea of you are contributing to a bigger picture with this one idea. And you hope people can kind of build on it. Spoiler alert, the build upon it comes at the end when you invite people to be a part of your idea. So contributor, I really love. Then comes the storyteller, whereas you share a personal experience, a testimony, a case study. We all love stories. So story time can happen within 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be a big, long-winded saga that goes on and on and on. It can be really quick. And then a visionary is kind of looking forward. Where are we going? What is kind of the outcome of this? And you get a really a sense of what's it for. And then finally, the advisor. This is the one I love. And oftentimes startups, and if you're in that space, we can speak to this in another way, Anthony talks about choices. You're never going to position your idea or your business or your messaging as novel if you're demonizing everybody who's come before you. So for example, if there's company A and B and your company C, if you're saying A and B have done it all wrong, or if you're saying even the industry has done it all wrong up to this point, and now you're the savior, you really don't elevate yourself by digging somebody else into a hole. So the best way to do this is to saying, hey, A did this well. They did 1, 2, 3 well. B does 4, 5, and 6 well. However, because of, for an example, AI, because technology has evolved so quickly over the last couple of years, we are elevating this particular market or this idea to a different level to keep up. So you're really looking to build upon those around you as opposed to pushing them down. There's where you build trust. All right, I'll stop going off, Anthony, because I geek out on this stuff. I'll hand it back
Brian,
to you.
Brian, before we leave this section, I want to just tell on myself, right? As an engineer, my comfort zone was I know security. I know how to draw architectural diagrams. And early in my career, I jumped straight into content. And that's because I was nervous. And jumping straight into content is never a good idea because we haven't established any type of relationship yet. So my invitation to you is have the patience. Be here first. Take as much time as you need to create those two experiences of relatability and empathy. Brian, any nuggets before we move on to the middle section? Because you see this all the time. Startups love to jump straight into content.
Yeah, so for Harvey and Melissa, I think, well, I know Joe's been here. Joe could probably teach this for us, but Antonio may have heard this before. But if you haven't, Antonio, what Anthony's talking about with terms of empathy and relatability is we talk about the connection triangle. Like, what does it take? Well, we're talking messaging here, right? We're talking about the contributor, what comes out your mouth, all that stuff. But if you're looking to connect with your audience, we often talk a lot about a connection triangle. And the first two things you really need to do with your audience is have a sense of empathy for them. What are they experiencing? And the capacity to relate to what they're experiencing. So when Anthony talks about empathy and relatability, he's talking about the connection triangle. The motions in order to get to empathy and relatability are through these frameworks that we're talking about now. So you build empathy and relatability through the voice of a contributor. You build it through storytelling. You do it through visionary and advisor voices. The end.
Thanks, Brian. So yeah, we covered each of these voices in previous episodes. And for those of you that have just joined our series, don't worry, we will be able to create a series of recorded videos that we'll publish to our presentation gym community. So, all right, that's the open. Brian, let's shift over to the second one, which is the middle section. And in the middle section is where the core message gets the spotlight. And there's two experiences that we want to create here is as you're sharing your core message, right? First of all, there's that curation part. What you select to share with the audience, this is on your own time, your own prep time. That's where your expertise and passion comes into play. But on stage, we move to the right side of the triangle is how is your audience connecting with your content? And the two experiences we want to create here are comprehension and engagement. Brian, this is important, whether you're doing a training exercise, whether you're pitching a product, whether you're having a sales call, these are the two experiences when done well means you've done a great job.
Yeah, I want to talk really quick about comprehension engagement. They're also part of the connection triangle, but let's talk about them from the perspective of voices. Anytime you are talking about your product, the very center, and this could be a product, right? You're talking about your product, how it's built. I am not going to learn how to build code or AI in one day if I'm your audience member. I'm not going to be able to understand the full scope of your business in one presentation. And so what is important was when you're talking about your subject matter or you're talking about your product or your service, whatever that core expertise that you have, this is not an opportunity to do a data dump. Oftentimes people get caught in their own silos of expertise because that's where the comfort lies. And so they just start heaving all this information with their 20, 30 years of experience on their audience, and the capacity for them to comprehend goes down very quickly. If there are investors in the audience, or if there are stakeholders in the audience, or people who want to participate in your mission, if they don't understand, they'll disengage. So simplifying your message, the core message, is important for comprehension. Then there's space for engagement. So they understand it, they still have capacity to ask questions or do something that you may want them to do at the end of the presentation. This is your engagement. This is the invitation. But if people are exhausted and tuned out, they may say, hey, makes sense, but I'm not getting out of my seat to talk to this person. I'm not clicking their QR code. I'm not writing down an email. I'm not getting out of my seat and going to meet them when they come off the stage. So core message must keep in mind when you're sharing that comprehension and engagement is at the heart of designing the content of your message.
And Brian, engagement, for those who have joined us before, is simply a three-step process. There's a call to think. And when you look at the screen, these are the light bulb elements on the storyboard. Then there's a call to feel, and those are the heart elements on the storyboard. And then we'll get to the call to act when we get to the close. But essentially, these in this middle part, you get to take on a voice for a specific reason. So if we take a look at the slide here, if you're doing a sales kickoff meeting, likely you're going to be using the change maker voice. Here is what our company is going to achieve in the coming year. If you're doing a sales presentation, likely you're using an advisor voice to help the client or the audience member make the best choice for them. If you're doing a growth conversation, uh, timelines, milestones for the upcoming year, you're likely speaking with the voice of a visionary. The fourth voice, if you're sharing a go-to-market strategy, you're likely speaking with the voice of a leader. And finally, if you're doing a product demonstration, obviously, this is where the teacher voice has the biggest strengths. And each of these voices we covered in a previous episode. And in our master class, we feature exercises for all of these voices and all of these compositions. Brian?
What I also want to point out, Anthony, what you're sharing is these all overlap. So when you're talking about, for example, growth or go to market, you could be deploying the voice of an advisor and the leader and the teacher. So they're not necessarily standalones, but as you develop them, you can again go back to the analogy of the instrument, the musical instrument. What does the audience need to know from you in order for you to relate and empathize around their pain point or where they may be in their journey? So that's just kind of a little add-on I want to emphasize.
All right, Brian, let's bring it home. So this brings us to the last part of the presentation. And there's a few nuances here. I'll take the first one, and Brian, I'll pass the second one over to you. So remember, in the open, we opened with a story, right? So this could be, here is a client. He has a problem, and he's experiencing frustration, anger, and a little bit of confusion. The middle part could be going back to that story. You're taking someone through a case study of how they used your product, your solution, to navigate out of the problem to the finish line. And then you end here, right? After they used your product, they're arriving at point B, they're happy, they're confident, they completed a successful journey. So that's how the voice of a storyteller can take parts all throughout your presentation. And you can sprinkle nuggets and touch back onto that story throughout. Now, there's a second opportunity to do a callback. And Brian, break down how vision comes into play.
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize to everybody here that this is a summary. Usually we're not giving the data dump. We're just kind of retouching on some points that we've made over the last 8 weeks. We're going to do this week by week workshop starting again soon. Anthony, I think maybe after the holidays, but we'll figure that out later. So to Anthony's point here, when it comes to vision, when you're closing out your messaging, I call this as the first callback. In the beginning, you had this voice of a contributor, like, here is the idea that I want to share. Here is, or here is the startup that I want to share. And you kind of say, you know, Brian believes, you got your vision, your value, and your vows. Brian believes this, and we're going towards this. I'm being very generic, but towards the end, now is the opportunity to include people in your audience in this vision. Together, we can do this. Together, we can do A, we can do B, we can do C. And the invitation then comes. In this vision, we need to take this first step together. So in the callback, you've gone from I believe to an invitation of together, we can do this. And it's really unique situation because the callback naturally closes that conversational loop. And now people have a general idea. If you didn't do your data dump, if you were good with the storytelling and you build trust and you did the connection triangle, again, all stuff we'll talk about in our ongoing workshops, you're gonna get a second conversation. And that is what you want. If you're a startup, I mean, Melissa, you know this, working in startup, no one has ever rushed the stage after a pitch and said, here's the $1 million you asked for. It's always about a second conversation. It's all about due diligence. Tell me more about your idea. Tell me more about your startup. Tell me more about insert what your messaging is about. So to take the pressure off of yourself, it's not against swinging for the fences once you step off the stage. It's really about building trust, second conversations, and finding opportunities to include people in your conversation.
And before we go into the exercise, Brian, from this big picture perspective, let's just revisit the engagement loop that you've created. Now, you've opened with a call to think. That's the light bulb. Then you switched into a call to feel. Those are the two hearts. Then you switch back to more call to think, two more light bulbs. And then you switch to call to feel. Now, doing this, call to think, call to feel, call to think, call to feel, you're connecting with hearts and minds. And that sets up the call to act. Right? You've connected with both experiences really well. And as Brian said, they're ready for an invitation. And the best invitation always is going to be that next conversation. Let's bring the slide exercise. So with every gym session, you always have three choices. Number one, you can ask me and Brian a question, anything presentation related. We will give our best of our resources, knowledge, and experiences to share with you. Number two, you could rehearse a portion of your presentation. Bring that to the stage. You'll get feedback from me and Brian and your fellow gym participants. And the final thing is you can choose to do this exercise. And because we are at the final workshop or final workout of the series, this is how to do the close. So here's the three cards in front of you. As we saw in the previous slide, we want you to open with vision. And the script that you'll use is together we will win, and just highlight elements of that vision. The second one is you're talking about what's beyond that vision. When we cross that finish line, that immediate one, lots of doors open to us. You want them to be looking beyond and what they've made possible and bigger opportunities for bigger wins. Share what that could be. For example, we talked about, Harvey, you've spoken on a TED stage, right? Getting on a TEDx stage opens doors. Once you have that signature presentation, you can use that as a credibility piece of video to apply for more conferences, to get invited to South by Southwest. So celebrate that you can get to a vision, opening the door for bigger visions. And then the final thing must be an invitation. Do not leave the stage until you get them to a second conversation at minimum. Like Brian said, there's not going to be a check waiting, but there will be an opportunity, should you do things well, to get them to a second conversation. Tell them how, tell them where, and make it happen. Brian?
Yeah, nice. That was good. That was well said. Just again, to give everyone kind of a framework of what we're doing, we'll always begin with a green room. We'll have kind of light conversation. We then get into the micro training, which was a summary today. And then we will always give you something to practice. That's something to practice if you're here like Joe and probably has all the material that we've ever produced and loves to practice this stuff. And so when we get into the gym, that's when or before we go into the gym, you guys will all hear my world famous commercial, and then we'll cut LinkedIn off and we'll go into this half hour of either, it's up to you, it's your gym, Q&A. You can practice this, you can practice your presentation, you can rehearse something, whatever it is that you would like to do, that's for you. That's the framework and the pace at which we always do it. But other than that, Anthony, that was a summary. For those who've been here for the first time, that was a lot. But hey, maybe we can go into the Q&A session in the gym and unpack a little bit more. And I got nothing else unless you want me to go with.
No, go for the commercial. I'll layer in the slides later, but do your thing.
All right, this is what the world's talking about. Anyway, I'd like to remind everybody this workout is brought to you by the Heroic Voice Academy Masterclass. Go to heroicvoice.com/masterclass, learn more about the application process. Today's presentation gym is always part of a 9-week workshop, and each week we'll focus on one presentation skill that'll give you insights and practical tools for developing a deeper connection and help you be recognized for your authority, respected for your leadership, and rewarded for your impact. We're broadcasting on Zoom and LinkedIn. If you'd like to jump on our show, if you're over on LinkedIn, you can go to heroicvoice.com/gym, click the Zoom button and join us for a pitch practice. If you miss any of it, you can connect with us on LinkedIn to read all the articles, watch the latest shows. But if you're looking for the whole enchilada, you can go to heroicvoice.com/gym. There you can find all the resources and tools to position yourself as a fully prepared presenter. So for example, you can enter the gym, you can book an appointment with us, and you can go to the Academy page for all the online courses and templates. And finally, what's really cool, you can take the scorecard for your personalized assessment. This is all free. And I often say that our free stuff is better than any of the paid stuff you'll get anywhere else. Our topics are part of a weekly workout program that gives you a deeper dive into the topic for the week. Anthony, this is your time to shine. Tell us about what's happening throughout the week.
Thanks, Brian. We all know that getting in shape is not a once-a-week event. So we give you multiple opportunities to work out. Monday, I publish an infographic giving you a short preview of what we'll be learning and going through on Thursday. Brings us to Tuesday, and Brian, I know that this is one of your favorite days.
Yeah, Tuesday, Silicon Impact is on 92.9 FM if you're in the Bay Area, South Bay to be more specific, but you can also catch it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're now putting all the shows also on YouTube, but look for Silicon Valley Impact. We talk with all the people who are making an impact in the startup ecosystem, fundraising, founders, funders, all that good stuff, partnerships, go-to-market strategies, communication, women in leadership, which is co-hosted with Marianne Becker. But that's all available now. Check it out. It's good stuff.
And on Wednesdays, I'll take that Monday infographic and unpack it into an article. So for those of you who love to read articles, read the Wednesday article. It'll set you up for success. For Thursday, Brian, what happens on Thursdays?
And we're here every Thursday, 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. doing the gym. First part is part of a micro training, and then it's the audience's opportunity to practice their presentation.
And this brings us to Friday. I'm going to repost this to LinkedIn. I'm going to tag each of you, and I would invite each of you to post what was your biggest takeaway from our gym workout.
All right, this is where I just drop the mic and walk away. But this is your time to really ask questions, practice. It's really up to you. It's your time. And so come one, come all, we'll give you the stage.